Welcome to the Good Book Tales. Today we step into an ancient world where dusty valleys echo with the sound of marching armies, and a single battle could decide the fate of an entire nation. This is the story of David and Goliath. Not just a fight between a boy and a giant, but a clash of courage against fear, faith against intimidation, and destiny against overwhelming odds. Imagine standing on a hillside under the blazing sun, the smell of dust and iron heavy in the air. On one side, the army of Israel trembles behind their shields. On the other, the Philistine warriors stand tall, their armor glinting in the light. And then he appears, Goliath, a giant of a man, towering above all others, his voice booming across the valley as he calls for a challenger. His spear is like a tree trunk, his shield almost as tall as a man. Every day for 40 days, he has stepped forward to mock and taunt, daring anyone to face him. But no one moves. Not a single soldier dares to step forward. Far from the battlefield, in a quiet village, a young shepherd named David tends to his sheep. He's not a soldier, not a warrior, just the youngest of 8 brothers with a sling at his side and faith in his heart. His life is simple, filled with music from his harp and the quiet watch over his flock. But fate has a way of finding the most unlikely heroes. When David is sent to deliver food to his brothers at the front lines, he doesn't know his world is about to change forever. As David arrives, he hears Goliath's challenge echo across the valley. He sees the fear in the soldier's eyes, even in the eyes of his own brothers. Something in David stirs, not fear, but anger that anyone would defy the living God of Israel. While others see an unbeatable giant, David sees an opportunity to prove that victory doesn't come from strength alone, but from faith and courage. The camp whispers about rewards for the man who defeats Goliath, riches, honor, even the king's own daughter in marriage. But David's reason is different. He isn't thinking of glory. He's thinking of justice. He steps forward, asking, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His words are met with laughter and doubt. His own brothers scold him, telling him to go back to his sheep. But David doesn't back down. And so, in the midst of an army too afraid to move, one boy walks toward the king with nothing but a shepherd's sling and an unshakable belief. The air grows tense. The giant waits. The valley falls silent. What happens next will change the course of history forever. The king of Israel, Saul, sits in his tent, his face shadowed with worry. Every day he has listened to Goliath's voice booming across the valley, each insult cutting deeper into the pride of his people. His soldiers look to him for answers, but even the king, a man once known for his courage, feels the weight of fear pressing down on his shoulders. The promise of reward has gone unanswered for over a month, and the morale of the army hangs by a thread. Into this tense and hopeless atmosphere walks David, still smelling faintly of sheep and fresh grass. His appearance is almost laughable in a place filled with hardened warriors. No armor, no sword, just a sling hanging loosely by his side. But there's something in his eyes that makes him stand out. It's not arrogance, it's not recklessness. It's something deeper, a quiet certainty that seems out of place on the battlefield. Saul studies the boy, perhaps expecting him to flinch or falter under the weight of the giant's challenge. Instead, David speaks plainly, telling the king about the times he has fought off lions and bears while protecting his sheep. He talks about those moments with the calm of someone who has already faced danger and survived. "The same God who rescued me from the paw of the lion," David says, "will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." The words hang in the air. Around them, soldiers exchange doubtful glances. Some shake their heads. A boy against a seasoned warrior? Against Goliath, whose very armor is heavier than David himself? It sounds impossible. Yet there's an unshakable ring of truth in David's voice. Outside the camp, the two armies wait. The Philistines are restless, certain that no one will come forward. Goliath, towering above his men, runs a hand over the edge of his massive spear and smiles, convinced the Israelites will cower again. He doesn't yet know that a shepherd has stepped forward. As the day wears on, the sun begins to drop lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the valley floor. The air feels thicker, as though holding its breath. David refuses the heavy armor offered to him, testing the weight and shaking his head. He chooses instead to keep his sling, the weapon he knows best, and bends down to pick smooth stones from the nearby stream. Each stone he chooses seems deliberate, as if he can already see the moment they will fly from his sling. Somewhere beyond the ridges, a cold wind begins to move through the hills, whispering of the battle that is coming. The giant waits, the boy prepares, and the valley itself seems to know that when they finally meet, nothing will ever be the same. As David readies himself, whispers ripple through the Israelite camp. Some see his courage as inspiring, a spark in the darkness that has hung over them for weeks. Others mutter that this is madness, a foolish gamble that will end before it begins. Among them is Eliab, David's oldest brother, who still feels stung by the boy's boldness earlier. He watches from a distance, torn between fear for his brother's life and a pride he refuses to admit. In the Philistine camp, the mood is different. Warriors laugh and slap each other on the back, mocking the idea that a shepherd would challenge their champion. To them, Goliath is more than a fighter. He is a living weapon, their shield against humiliation. His victories have made them believe he cannot be defeated, and the sight of David walking toward him with no armor only deepens their certainty. But under the laughter, a few eyes linger longer than others. Even among the Philistines, there is curiosity about why the Israelites would send such an unlikely challenger. Meanwhile, King Saul wrestles with conflicting thoughts. Allowing David to fight means risking the nation's honor on a single encounter. If David falls, the Israelites will be bound to the Philistines. But something about the boy's words, his unwavering calm, keeps replaying in the king's mind. He finds himself hoping, against all reason, that perhaps this shepherd might succeed where trained warriors have failed. The valley remains silent except for the occasional call of distant birds. David stands at the edge, the sling coiled loosely in his hand, the weight of the stones pressing against his palm. Across the way, Goliath moves forward, each step making the ground tremble. Both know they are about to meet, but neither knows exactly how this day will end. The valley seems to shrink as David steps forward, each pace closing the gap between himself and the giant who has terrorized an army for 40 days. Goliath's shadow stretches long over the ground, his armor flashing like fire in the fading light. His voice booms, mocking the boy before him, calling him a child, a weakling, unworthy of even holding a weapon in this battle. The Philistine army roars with laughter, the sound rolling like thunder across the hills. But David doesn't flinch. His gaze stays fixed on his opponent, not on the size of his spear or the weight of his shield, but on the place where he knows the battle will be won. His fingers brush over the smooth stones in his pouch, feeling their cool, familiar shape. He adjusts his sling with the ease of someone who has practiced for countless hours under the open sky, alone with his flock and the wind. Behind him, the Israelite soldiers watch in breathless silence. Some grip their weapons tightly, wishing they could believe as he does. Others avert their eyes, unable to bear what they fear will come next. Even Saul, standing tall on the ridge, leans forward as though trying to will strength into the boy's small frame. The distance between them closes until David can see the sneer curling across Goliath's face. The giant steps forward, slamming the butt of his spear into the ground so hard the earth seems to shiver. Dust rises between them, curling in the golden light like smoke before a storm. For a moment, time feels frozen. The shouts of both armies fade into the background. It is just the boy and the giant, the sling and the spear. Faith against fear. The first move is about to be made. Goliath takes another step forward, his heavy armor creaking, and suddenly he lifts his hand, signaling for the laughter of his army to quiet. His tone changes, no longer playful, but sharp and laced with irritation. He calls out again, questioning why the Israelites would insult him by sending a boy. The words slice through the tense air, and for the first time there's an undercurrent of anger in the giant's voice. This isn't just a fight for dominance anymore. Goliath feels his pride on the line. David stands his ground, but then something unexpected happens. From the Philistine side, a second warrior begins to move forward. Not as large as Goliath, but quick and armed with a long spear. The murmurs from both armies ripple like wind through grass. It seems Goliath has decided he won't face this challenge alone at first. He wants to weaken David's resolve, to break him before the fight even begins, using this second fighter to test the boy's courage and perhaps end the fight before it truly starts. The Israelite camp erupts in confusion. This was not the agreement, and Saul's face hardens. But before anyone can intervene, David steps forward without hesitation. His voice, steady and clear, rings out across the valley, telling them he will face whoever comes. The Philistine challenger stops mid-step, clearly surprised at the boy's lack of fear. Goliath smirks, gesturing for the warrior to fall back. It's as if the giant wants to take this personally now, as if he's decided the insult can only be answered by his own hand. But that moment has already shifted the air. David now knows this isn't just a battle against one man. It's a statement to two armies, two nations, and to every doubter watching from the ridges. The Philistines shout and stomp their feet, their chants pounding like drums, while the Israelites grip their weapons tighter, torn between hope and dread. The sun dips lower, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold, as if nature itself senses the weight of what's about to happen. Goliath lowers his helmet slightly, his eyes locked on David. The space between them feels electric, like the stillness before lightning strikes. And in that charged silence, every heart on both hills waits for the storm to break. The moment finally comes. Goliath lets out a roar that echoes off the valley walls and charges forward, each step shaking the ground. His massive spear is raised, ready to strike. The Philistines shout in unison, their voices a wall of sound, while the Israelites hold their breath, knowing this charge could end everything in an instant. But David moves first. His feet are light on the dirt, his pace steady and controlled. He slips a stone into his sling and begins to spin it, the leather cord whistling through the air. Every rotation builds speed, the motion so fluid it looks almost effortless. Goliath keeps coming, closing the gap, his armor flashing in the last light of the day, and then, with a sudden release, David sends the stone flying. The air seems to hold still for that heartbeat, until the stone strikes. It hits with a sharp, heavy crack, sinking into Goliath's forehead. The giant's stride falters, his spear dips. For a moment, his expression freezes in shock, as if he can't understand what has happened. Then the weight of his body takes over, and he falls forward with a thunderous crash that shakes the valley. The Philistine camp erupts into chaos. Shouts turn into gasps, then into cries of disbelief. The Israelites erupt in a roar of victory, their fear replaced with a sudden surge of courage. David stands over the fallen giant, chest rising and falling, his sling still in hand. The battle that seemed impossible is over, but just as the Israelites prepare to rush forward, a horn blasts from the Philistine side. From behind their lines, another giant figure emerges, taller than any man but smaller than Goliath, wearing dark armor that reflects none of the sunlight. This is no random soldier. Whispers ripple through the Israelite ranks. It's Goliath's brother, a warrior known for his speed and vengeance. His presence turns the moment of triumph into a new wave of tension. David looks up, eyes locking with this new challenger. The battlefield, which had just been won, feels dangerous again. Both armies freeze, unsure whether the fight has truly ended or if an even greater battle is about to begin. The sun slips behind the hills, and shadows stretch across the valley, hiding whatever will happen next. The valley holds its breath as the new figure steps forward. The tension crackles between the two armies, but then, without warning, the Philistine leader raises his hand and calls his warriors back. Goliath's brother glares at David, his jaw tight, but he does not advance. Instead, he kneels beside the fallen giant, his voice low and filled with grief. The horn sounds again, this time as a signal to retreat. Slowly, the Philistines pull back toward their city, carrying the weight of a loss they never imagined. On the Israelite side, relief crashes over the soldiers like a wave. The shouts of victory rise again, but now they are mixed with awe. They had seen the impossible happen before their eyes, a shepherd defeating the giant who had paralyzed them with fear. King Saul steps forward, his eyes locked on David. The boy's hands are still dusty, his sling resting at his side, but there's something unshakable in the way he stands, as though the battle was never just about strength. Eliab pushes through the crowd, stopping in front of his younger brother. For a long moment, he says nothing. Then, with a nod that carries both pride and apology, he places his hand on David's shoulder. Around them, soldiers who had once doubted him now speak his name with respect. As the sun dips fully beyond the horizon, the Israelite camp begins to move. The fear that had gripped them for weeks has lifted, replaced by a sense of unity and courage. They know this victory will be told for generations, not just as the story of David and Goliath, but as proof that faith and determination can overcome even the greatest obstacles. David walks alone for a moment, looking back at the now empty valley. The wind carries the faint sound of the retreating Philistines, but also something quieter. The knowledge that today's battle was only one of many he will face. The giant had fallen, but the real victory was in the courage to stand when everyone else had turned away. And so, the shepherd who came with bread and cheese leaves as a hero, carrying not just the memory of the giant he faced, but the truth that even the smallest among us can change the course of history.